So, we're going to talk about saving and investment planning, um, the basics of saving and investing. Uh, you'll be able to identify some different types of investments, including savings, and then also be able to um, identify the factors that we use to think about when creating a savings and investment plan. Some key terms that we'll be talking about and learning are saving, investing, yield, and liquidity. So, first off, right, we talk about just the basics, the basics of savings and investing, and creating a strategy of saving and investing is vital for any financial plan. Putting away money in a systematic way is the basis for achieving your financial goals. As we go through what and why people save and why we encourage people to save, uh, right, it's for financial security and stability. We want to make sure that financially you're able to go through a downturn in the economy, for example. Um, the other reason that we want you to save, or that the government wants you to save, is because what we talked about in our last chapter about what the banks do with the money that we put into the banks, right? The banks use that money to uh, loan out for businesses and governments and other people to borrow. Right? So they take that money that we use, okay, and that we put into savings and some investments, and businesses use that money to buy equipment and uh, hire new people. When more people get jobs, they uh, now have wages or higher wages. They then tend to spend that money into the economy, which then in turn creates more demand, um, which then makes people want to buy more factory or build new factories or replace equipment, come up with new products. Those create jobs, expand economic activity, and again, it keeps going, right? So that's why we encourage, and why the government and economists will encourage saving and investment activities, is to ultimately grow the economy. So, what is saving? Saving is simply storing money for future use, not, um, just not spending it now. Okay? Um, so, you could be putting it aside for a down payment on a home or a car, or maybe there's something that you want to purchase in the future, or perhaps you're saving uh, saving it for an emergency, right? Uh, Saving, simply put, is the storage of money for future use. How much you save, where you put your savings, what you save for. Those are all important decisions that go along with saving, but saving is the storage of money for future use. Um, okay. After or we also have investing. Investing is a way that we uh, save to earn more money, or we use these savings to earn more money. Saving savings is a type of investing, right? But it's extremely low risk, low return. Okay? It's a very mild investment. Um, so when we look at our financial plan, we want to look and think about our investment goals, right? We need to make sure that we have enough money to fund our living expenses. We want to make sure that we have some income, some current income that provides enough money to cover our living expenses. And we also want to have some long term growth. We want to have uh, a long term goal in our investment, our financial plan. Um, this is not something that's going to happen in the short term. Clearly, it's a long term goal. It's our retirement investments. And this is where we may invest, where we actually think about investments, okay? Where we're buying things in the hopes that they're going to increase in value over the long term, not the short term. So that's where your growth comes in, right? Okay. So we talk about savings. You should have and put aside about 10% of your uh, income, right, your cash flow in. 10% of that should go into a savings account and just save it for future use, for emergency funds, just in case something happens, right? And hopefully we don't lose it. Uh, keep in mind that when we put money into the bank, that money earns interest, right? The interest is that money that we get for letting other people use our money. So if we put 500 or excuse me, $50 a month into an account every month, put the $50 in, at the end of the year we'll have $600. If we put this into a program that pays simple interest, you get $9 interest every three months. That's great. You'll earn uh, some extra dollars. That interest is why we put, or that's our return, okay, for saving money. Compound interest is when we get paid interest on top of compounding. Um, we get paid interest on interest. So earning interest on previously earned interest results in a faster growth of our savings. Simple interest, simple annual interest, 10% of $1,000 is $100. But if that interest is compounded, at the end of next year, if we don't put any more money in, so at the end of this year, we've got 1,100, so our $1,000 plus our $100 interest. Next year, we're going to get $110. Right? We'll have our uh, interest earned on the $1,100. and so on and so forth. So the next year is based on the $1,210. So every year we're getting paid on top of getting paid, right? That's compounded interest. And this chart shows what would happen if we compound the interest. This is our monthly payment. And if we compound it quarterly, which is a common financial term, quarterly is every 3 months. So if we get paid our interest every 3 months, these would be our balances with these monthly contributions. So even now at $5 a month, you think, oh, that's not that much. But after 5 years, you're going to have, $400, which may be enough to buy or put forth a down payment on a car. As or as the interest rate goes up, clearly the more money we'll make, right? So that's what when we talk about having a high rate of return or a high interest rate, when we're getting paid, that's a good thing. When we're not getting paid, maybe not so much, right? Again, how does our saving influence economic activity? And our saving influences that activity. It encourages that growth, right? Because it makes money available for people to borrow. Those borrowing encourages that economic activity. So, excuse me. So different ways that we can save. So there are savings accounts, CDs, money market accounts. These are things that are offered by pretty much any institution, any financial institution, your bank, your credit unions, those kinds of places, that you can have a systematic way to save dollars. A savings account, this is simply a savings plan. You typically don't have to have a very high balance kept in your savings account. $100, you can open a savings account with $100 and it's just going to sit there. You can deposit more money, withdraw money as you need. It's extremely liquid. Liquid's one of our vocabulary terms, right? Liquidity, when we talk about liquidity, we talk about how fast we can get our money, how fast that money is available in cash form to us. In a savings account, I can go to the bank, withdraw it, it's cash. A certificate of deposit is a specific type of deposit, has a higher minimum balance. Usually your CDs are starting at $100 or $1,000, and you're leaving that money deposited for a specific amount of time. Could be a month or 60 days or a few years. The benefits of a CD is that it is a higher interest, right? There typically are going to be a fairly higher than a savings account, and it's still very, very safe. The money is there. If you really, really need to, you can cash one in early. It's going to cost you a little bit more. You get a penalty or whatnot, but it is there, and it is safe. And then finally, the last type of savings plan is a money market account, and that pays a variable So variable interest rate, which means that changes based on government and corporate securities, how the markets are doing and whatnot, what the government says the interest can be. So money market accounts usually don't require long-term deposits. So you can deposit some dollars in there and then take it back out if you need. They do, however, have a very large minimum balance requirement. So you might have to deposit at least $1,000 or maybe it's $10,000 into your money market account before you can establish one. Again, you're talking about a higher interest rate in something that is safe. Money markets are still typically going to be safe. You're going to have a higher than regular savings account interest rate, but you do have that larger minimum balance requirement. Then we start getting into your securities. Your securities are your stocks and your mutual funds and your bonds, right? So stocks, a stock investment, when you buy stocks, and you've probably been hearing a lot about stocks lately, right? It's in the news all the time. When you buy stocks, you're actually buying a part of that company. A stock investment, you're buying a share of stock, or maybe it's a partial share, because you can do that through several different apps now and buy pieces of a share. But what you're buying is ownership. You're becoming part of an owner of that company. You can buy it directly. We talk about there used to be a stockbroker, and then I heard the analogy the other day to not trust a stockbroker because they're usually broker than you are. That's where they get their name from. Joke. I got jokes today, yo. But now you can buy stocks on different apps and Ameritrade, and a lot of them are doing free trades, so you're not even paying that commission or that fee that goes along with buying and selling stocks. Anyway, it is a super common way of investing. So the whole idea is that you buy when the stock price is low. So buying now is, if you think that this is as low as we're going to go, then buying now is a great idea because those prices are going to go back up, right? And if the stock increases in value, you sell it for more than you bought it for, you get a capital gain. If you lose money, it's called a capital loss. It is risky, right? Who knows what's going to happen? Nobody knew this was going to happen. But it did. So some people are losing money. If we all buy now and start buying into stocks that are depressed right now because of what is going on in the world, and then 6 months from now, everything is all back to normal and rosy again, and all those stock prices all go skyrocketing back up, well, we will all then have that wealth, share in that wealth. But so one security is a stock investment. Another is bonds. Bonds is a loan. Okay? It's a type of loan. Businesses and government agencies and entities use bonds to borrow money from the public. So when you buy a bond, you're basically lending money to either the company or the government agency to use for whatever they need to. A lot of schools will have a bond issue where if we want to build a new school or renovate or remodel a school, we might do a bond issue uh, where we borrow $5 million in bonds. So we create these bonds, we issue them, uh, and then people buy them. We're paying interest on the bonds. Typically, those bonds are safe, right? Uh, a little bit safer. A loan is a little bit safer than a stock investment, but businesses can still go bankrupt. And if you loan money to a business and it went bankrupt, then you're out. But typically, that's not going to happen, right? And then our last security is our mutual funds. Mutual funds, instead of buying individual stocks and bonds to create your financial portfolio, you could buy stocks or shares of stock in a mutual fund. And what happens is there are a lot of us that come together and buy these shares of the mutual fund. Somebody, the mutual fund manager, then has access to those funds, all of the funds, and buys and sells stocks and bonds as they need. Somebody else is controlling it. If we like how that mutual fund is doing, if they're performing well, we can buy more shares of stock, and that stock price then would go up, right? Because people are buying more. As we know, between supply and demand, to entice me to sell my shares, you need to pay me more than what I think it's worth. And then we've got some other alternative investments. Real estate is a big one. All right, people invest in real estate. Either they're buying their own home for security and stability. I have my house, I have a landing spot, or they might be buying real estate for rental income, buying a house and renting it out, buying some commercial property, and those kinds of investments. Okay. Our hope is that the value goes up, right? And that we'll be able to sell it later for more than what we bought it for. Sometimes that doesn't happen, right? So again, there is some risk there. Real estate is also not very liquid. It takes a while to, even when I find a buyer to buy my real estate, there's a process that we go through, right, with different rules and regulations. Another is our commodities. Commodities, we're talking grain and livestock, precious metals, currency, financial instruments are all commodities. Investors purchase our commodity contracts in anticipation of um, higher prices in the future, right? So they're banking on some higher prices later on. And I might have a video for you.
What kind of world do you want to live in?
Oops, sorry about that. And I apologize. That was not the video that I wanted you to see. I think it's this one. Yes. So,
I'm here to try to explain to you what it is we do. We are commodity brokers. We
Okay, so that's our commodities. And then finally, for alternative investments, you have collectibles. Typically, you're thinking of things like jewelry or baseball cards. Shoes is another common collectible these days, where you're buying it now and saving it, and hopefully in the future the value is going to go up, right? Could be toilet paper currently, right? So our 9 main categories of uh, investment alternatives, the 2 broad ones, you have savings and you have investments. Our savings are going to be our savings accounts, our CDs, money market accounts, and then our investments, our stock investments, our bonds, mutual funds, real estate, commodities, and collectibles. So when we go to evaluate those savings and investment options, when we're looking at all of the different options that we have for savings and investments, we want to look at what is going to be best for us. And everybody at different points in time have different goals and different options available to them. So you want to look at 4 main factors. The safety and risk of the investment. How safe is this investment? How safe is my money? Potential return, liquidity, and then what are the tax implications that we have for safety and risk? And it is that assurance that the money you've invested is going to be returned to you. When we put it into a savings account, I know for a fact that those dollars are going to come back to me, right? When I go to Vegas, I don't know that the money I take to Vegas is going to come back to me. It could, but those are kind of risky investments, right? If we call them investments. Your potential return, that's your yield. That's how much you're getting back. Again, when your savings account, it's very, very safe. However, the return on that, not very much. And then the liquidity, we talked about liquidity earlier. Your liquidity is how easily that is to turn into cash. How quickly can I convert that to cash? And then earlier we talked about compound interest. So this is a graph to illustrate your compound interest and the effect of compound interest on a $100 investment. With annual compounding, what is happening to those dollars? Clearly, the higher the rate here, the more you're going to earn in interest. And then finally, we also have your investment pyramid. Your investment pyramid, this is listing the different types of investments from low risk to high risk. Keeping in mind, the higher the risk, typically you're going to have a higher return. So our commodities that we talked about before, yeah, it may be risky, but it's definitely going to have a higher rate of return as well. Our growth stocks, our mutual funds, our real estate, may be, again, more risky, but that rate of return is a little bit higher. We also talk about liquidity. Liquidity is, again, how quickly we can turn that asset into cash to pay some unexpected bills. The $5,000 in our savings account, that's cash money, right? If we own $5,000 worth of real estate, it's going to take a while. It's not very liquid. If we own $5,000 worth of stock, yeah, we can sell it pretty easily. Hopefully, we still make our money on it, right? Or at least get out without losing money. Or maybe that's a risk that we take, that we're going to lose money. And then also, if the market's closed, we can't really sell our stock until the market opens. That's it. I'm going to post this and a few questions along with the notes page. Hopefully, between now and Monday at some point in time, you'll be able to answer at least a couple of questions I'm going to put up in the form of a little quiz.